Good evening. I was asked to do this presentation, and the question always comes up. So, what do we want to present about? And I always want to think that, throughout my career, I've been doing property management for about 8 years now, since 2013. And what I want to believe that what I'm presenting is everything that I messed up on, and was able to identify what we messed up on and actually correct it. So, for those that are listening, ultimately, you guys are, leveraging the mistakes that I made, I guess, throughout the 8 years that we've been doing this. And at this point, I've probably managed around 1,500 rental properties. Actively, we manage right around 400. But from, the amount of rental properties we manage close to around between 1,000 to 1,500 rental properties. So there's been a lot of mistakes that have been made. And there's also, the good thing is that there's always been a lot of lessons learned from it. Just real quick, quick disclaimer. I always got to say this is, it's not any kind of legal advice or anything that we're providing. This is just for educational purposes. A little bit about me is that I'm the broker and owner of Property Care. We are a full-fledged real estate brokerage. We're licensed with Texas. We have our HAR account. I actually started in 2011 buying my first rental. So, I want to say that I've been part of real estate for about 10 years now. Bought my first rental in 2011, bought a home investors franchise. Have you ever seen those signs that says "We Buy Ugly Houses" back in 2012? I ended up buying around eight rentals in 2012, and then a few here and there every year after that. And then I started Property Care in 2013. Originally, I was actually working public accounting in corporate life for Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and just really got involved in real estate and really just kind of made the decision to switch over to real estate and never looked back in terms of, I don't think I ever see a life actually going back to corporate life or anything. I've always enjoyed doing real estate, even since I was a little kid. I think probably the best part of doing real estate is actually taking a house that needs in major renovation and making it look something nice. It's probably the most enjoyable part of doing real estate. You really have to enjoy what you do in order to continue doing it. I think when I was in accounting, it's probably something I dreaded doing every single day. And it wasn't, I couldn't wait to get out of it, I guess you could say. And I did it for 6 years before I switched over to accounting. Definitely born and raised here in Houston. Never left. I've called Houston home my whole life. So one of the reasons why I say we call this unconventional tips is because I want to believe that so when I started my real estate career, I went to a lot of seminars. I was part of an educational program called Lifestyles Unlimited. Learned a lot of different things, and I didn't believe, or some of the stuff that was taught to me, I did not believe that they were the best advice. Ultimately, the goal when you're owning rentals is, or some of these tips is that to really just make owning rentals more enjoyable. I think, from a wealth building perspective, I think owning rentals is amazing. The tax advantages for it. But there's tough moments when you own rentals. And some of our tips here is just really just try to make owning rentals a lot more enjoyable than what they are to a lot of people. There's a reason why, have you ever heard of wholesalers or people who look for distressed properties? A lot of times people are searching for people who own rentals, or is their second home or investment property, because it gets to a point where owning rentals is not an enjoyable. And our goal is to be able to have tips or put into place things that make your life easier and make it where it's worthwhile, where you're just not letting it loose. And when I came up with these tips, some of the things is, number one is always make it more enjoyable. Try to maintain a professional relationship with your tenants will make your life way more enjoyable. Increase the desirability of the rental property is super important, or increase the value of property. do some preventative maintenance. I think, one of the interesting things is that I think one of you, other than if you own your own home, your rental property is probably your most valuable asset from a dollar perspective. So, we've come across owners all the time that don't want to do any additional work or spend any dollars to maintain one of their most valuable assets. And I always find that a mistake. There's some owners that I cross that come with a formula where they spend 5 to 10% of their gross revenue that they receive from the rent and put it towards maintaining their asset. I think maintaining your asset preservation is really important when you own rentals. It's not something that's really talked about amongst rental people because then it kind of ruins your cash flow a little bit. But I think from a long-term perspective, I think it's really important to have, maintain your asset, one of your most valuable assets that you could possibly have. Reduce potential future renovation costs. And we'll talk through this, and then, use of certain materials for renovations in a house, whether it's due to durability or lack of durability. Sometimes we'll use a specific product, for example, a cheaper paint, even though it's less durable, but it really doesn't matter because you're trying to save money in this perspective. And it doesn't matter what kind of paint you use, that you're going to have to turn it over no matter what. One of the key things that I really learned starting off is kind of uniformity. Whatever you do, you always want to be able to duplicate it. You want to be able to go get back. For example, if you use a certain paint color, you want to be able to reuse that same paint color. You don't want to use some kind of clearance paint color that you'll never find again. You're gonna have to go back and touch up the house or add it. Do in the second property. You want to be able to use the same color and over again. Set standards and practices that you actually stick to. Like, for example, if you tell a tenant that do not email or text you, or you don't provide their phone number, you never provide your phone number, you just provide an email, that you actually stick to that. Because again, if you set up some standards and rules and you don't stick to them, that's when your life becomes a little bit more miserable when you're owning rentals. Do not reinvent the wheel each time. I think there's great examples out there that you can really go towards. For example, one of the things that we do actually quite often is actually look towards the apartment industry. The apartment industry actually has, they kind of set the trends for a lot of things. For example, I think one of the big trends back then was to use vinyl plank rather than carpet. Apartments really started this, and single family landlords actually caught on to it and used it as a product, and it became prevalent where so many people use it now. Now you find even vinyl plank in new construction houses. But really, the apartment industry, if you're actually looking for a standard in terms of trying to find an example for you to use certain products and stuff, I think apartments is always a good place to look towards too. The last thing is always find ways to improve. Like I said, every tip that I'm going to present here, it's probably because we made a mistake and it really stuck with me. It's like something happened, or something that made my life miserable, or my company's life miserable, or my employees' life miserable, to the point that like, hey, we got to change what we're doing and let's stick to this. So we're always looking, finding ways to improve our process, how we can be ahead of the problem rather than just responding to issues that arise all the time. If you're always responding to issues, that's when your life becomes miserable. So getting in front of things is really important in terms of actually trying to make your life a little bit better when you're owning rentals. It's kind of interesting when I'm talking on this webinar. So, I've done many presentations in person, and you kind of get a feel for the crowd. But when I'm on this webinar, I'm literally just listening to myself talk, and I don't really see any facial expressions or how people are taking it. So hopefully, whatever I'm saying is actually great. You guys are really liking it and find it enjoyable, at least to listen to. So this is my first tips, and this became so important when I think back in February when we had the freeze, right? So this actually kind of came about. I had one of my first properties that one of the pipes in the attic actually sprung a leak and almost flooded the house. And I was lucky to get there within the hour before things got worse. But one of the things that we've always done at our company is that we actually locate exactly where the water shut off is for each and every single house. For some of the older houses, they don't have a water nozzle. So you got to know that it's either at the meter or there's a nozzle. And then in our system, we actually identify whether it's on the front of the house, the left or the right side of the house, or the back side of the house. So, I go back to February's when we managed 400 properties, we had our big freeze in February, and then, certain houses started springing leaks, and tenants would call us and ask us for help. And we were able to tell them the exact location of where to shut off the water to the house before the house flooded out. Never in my mind that, keeping this information in our system would help, like, across the board, all of our properties that we manage. So this is, one of those things where when you buy your first property, you should kind of keep track of it. Electrical panels, breaker boxes. So people take for granted, like, if you lived in a house, you probably know exactly where a breaker box is, but we've come across tenants so many times that have never lived in a single family house, and they've only lived in apartments their whole life. And you ask them what the breaker box or the electrical panel is, and they don't have a clue. So actually knowing where to access the electrical panel for them to help themselves, if a breaker were to jump, would potentially save you quite a bit of money tremendously, by not having to send an electrician out there or something were to jump off. And then even gas. So we actually always keep track of where the gas meter is around the house. And the reason for this is because you always want to turn on gas or all your utilities when a property goes vacant. And sometimes you don't know sometimes there's no gas appliances in the house. Like, for example, the stove is electric, the dryer is electric, but then the heater is actually gas. So the only place that you will find that is actually in the attic. And, we just looked at appliances, we wouldn't know that there was actually gas to the house. The reason why you want to turn on gas for all your vacancies, for example, if you're potentially doing a major renovation, if you leave gas off for a certain amount of time, time period, they may remove the gas meter, then you have to pull a gas permit again. So I always want to turn on gas. I want to say that it's 3 months, and potentially a gas meter may be pulled. We've gone longer. Owners have gone longer without turning on gas, and meters have stayed. But at the same time, though, I think we've seen meters pulled within 3 months of gas not being onto a house. And then if the meter gets pulled, like I said, you have to pull a permit again, and that actually costs extra money. They have to run a pressure test just to make sure that there's no leaks and be able to turn on the gas again. This is a big one. So we deal with so many investors, and one of the things that we see over and over again is that investors actually, or landlords, listen to their contractor in terms of what to do. What contractors want and what you want are generally two different. You guys have diverging interests in your property, meaning they want to maximize their profit. They want to make money from your renovation, and you're looking for a better solution potentially. And I can tell you, so I do quite a bit of remodels myself, fix a lot of houses. I actually have a flooring guy that has a great deal with like Shaw, the flooring company. And sometimes he'll get, there's a clearance on a specific flooring, like a wood flooring. And if you actually look at one of my listings on 1715 Cavalryman Lane, like that flooring, I got engineered hardwood for $1.50 per square foot, which is an amazing price, but I'll never be able to get again. And back to, one of my original rules is that you want to be able to duplicate your process. So I'm putting this flooring, it's in one of my flips, but it's not something that I'll ever beat again. So I plan on selling this house, never looking back again. It's a very nice flooring, got an amazing price. But if I were doing a rental, it's not something I would put in a rental because I wouldn't be able to ever find it again if I needed to find it again. So I hear owners all the time like, oh, we should listen to the contractors. What do they recommend? What they recommend is probably what is going to make the most money from their profit for their pocket. So do not listen to your contractor. I mean, you could in some instances, but for the most part, I think you always want to go in and know what you're looking for before you actually listen to your contractor, because his recommendation, like I said, is probably not in your best interest. Not saying that it wouldn't do the job, but as far as what you're looking for, it probably won't serve your best interests. This is one of the big things that I learned when I first started off in real estate investing, and I learned this in all the different schools, right? So every educational program that I ever been to, they always say, you should use a glossy paint on your walls. So when the tenant moves out, you're able to clean your walls and make it nice and clean again. Well, I'll tell you one thing is that I've never seen an investor get on their hands and knees and clean a wall. And two is that once a tenant moves out, if they actually put, nail holes in the wall, really can't clean that. So you end up having to paint the wall anyways. And the reason why I always use flat paint for home is that it actually hides all the imperfections. So you can actually, for every single one of our rentals, once the tenant moves out, we actually go in and repaint all the walls. We just don't cut in the corners, meaning like where the walls and the ceiling meet, but we actually re-roll all the walls and it looks nice and fresh and clean. And on top of that, if it's a rental, your walls are maybe not, the texture might not be so great, and flat paint actually hides all those imperfections. Same reason why flat paint is almost, always used on the ceilings, because it actually hides all the imperfections in the ceilings. You won't see it. The other thing is, for doors, trim, and cabinets, I think a lot of contractors, it'll save them money on one hand is that most people don't. People always use oil-based paint for doors, trim, and cabinets. That's a very common, but more recently, I think water-based paint have really come a long way. If you ever go into a house that was originally painted white, and then all of a sudden, a few years later, that white has actually turned yellowish color. The reason is because they use an oil paint, and the oils kind of come out and they yellow out the paint. So water-based, you actually don't run into that problem. Now, water-based would probably cost you around 30% more than what oil-based paint would cost. But if you're spending less time to make it, making it nice again, it may be worth it. I'm very big on water-based paint at this point. I think my contractors are too. Water-based is always easier to work with. It dries faster. It gets tacky, while oil-based takes a lot longer to dry. It's a bit more difficult to clean. You actually have to clean it with like paint thinner or something versus just water. Any kind of water-based paint, you can always clean with water, even your hands. If you get oil-based paint on your hands, you actually have to use paint thinner or some kind of specific cleaner for your hands in order to get it off. For colors, we actually use only 2 to 3 colors for walls. I think we have Killing Beige for beige, and then Agreeable Gray for a gray color. And then the one thing I did learn from a contractor was like, we always have a tough time trying to pick out what color we want to use for the exterior. And he's like, he just uses literally the same wall color inside the house as he does on the outside. Again, it's a rental. I think one of the biggest things that you always got to remember is that you're not living inside the house. This is not your dream home. This is not, your home. It's for a renter. It's supposed to serve a purpose for a rental. It's supposed to be nice and neat, but you're not supposed to customize it in such a way that, it's hard to keep track of. So one of the easiest, best ways, and I'm actually the only person, and other than my contract, that does this, is that where we paint literally the exterior walls the same color as the interior walls. And no one has ever noticed, because inside your house, you actually use soft white generally for light bulbs, and that actually creates a different hue on the paint colors, and you really can't tell the difference in natural daylight versus like a soft white light bulbs. So, I think as far as making things nice and neat, everyone, a lot of people have moved towards granite countertops from Formica. And what I find interesting, and this is kind of bucking the trend for a lot of people, is that owners, landlords, they've always used this. They put the tile backsplash on the whole wall. And I find it interesting because like I feel like everyone has to do it, but if you're actually moving from a Formica countertop, the Formica, which has the backsplash, integrated, attached to the countertop, it only has the 4-inch backsplash. But for some reason, the moment that you upgrade to a granite, now you have to, put this whole nice, wall backsplash. Well, you almost double the cost of your granite, or replacing your counters by installing the backsplash, the full wall backsplash. And we replace granite for so many properties at this point, but the granite installer actually only installs the granite, and he actually outsources the plumbing and the tile work. So you're actually paying a separate person. I mean, it's all inclusive. He's subcontracting now. You're still paying him, but ultimately you're paying, twice as much for this additional work. So granted, a lot of times for like a prefab piece of 8-foot slab is about $400 at most. And then, like I said, a whole wall backsplash would cost probably like $600, so $400 for the granite, plus another $18 per square foot for the install. And then again, you once you put in the backsplash in there, it gets pretty expensive, especially when people would start doing the glass tile. Again, you just got to keep in mind that this is not a house that you're living in. It's a tenant's house. So for all the rental properties that I've ever done, we've only put in the 4-inch backsplash, would cost another like $50. And for every owner that I've ever seen do it, they have always put the whole wall backsplash, which, like I said, my suggestion is to always just keep the 4-inch backsplash, which pre-existed on the Formica countertops. Carpet. So again, every owner that they renovated without my suggestions, they always put carpet in the bedrooms, and it's always the same excuse, which is the craziest part, because they're like, well, they like carpet in their bedrooms, and I'm like, that's great, but you're not living in the house. If you actually look at, again, so this is something that we've actually looked towards the apartment industry for, and they don't use carpet a lot of times in bedrooms anymore. It's generally hard surfaces. Again, it's easier to turn over when a property goes vacant, especially with pets. So one of the things that we learned is that a lot of tenants do have pets. I would say around 30-50% of tenants have pets. And as much as you clean the carpet, there could be a stench that stays with the carpet. And the reason is because there's a padding underneath the carpet. So if there's urine smell or some kind of pet smell from the pet, it actually is not from the carpet, it's actually from the padding beneath it. So as much as you clean the carpet, you can mask it. At that point, you're just able to mask it. So our recommendation is never put carpet in rental properties anymore. And actually, so for my own personal house, I have hardwood floors throughout the whole house, and I put rugs under my beds, in the hallways and the living room and stuff. So, having rugs in a house works just as fine. We've never had anyone not want a rental property because there was no carpet. I don't think there's any need for it. Like I said, we've moved towards vinyl plank, and I want to believe that there's a debate between glue down versus a floating vinyl plank. I always use a glue down. They're both waterproof. The material itself is waterproof, but for me, when you put a floating vinyl plank in there, water can still stay in there and get stuck under there. Versus a glue down, your pieces, if the house were to get flooded, you're still able to actually glue the pieces back versus just having to replace the carpet or something. And then for tile, don't keep it straight. Meaning, tile's great in the kitchens and the bathrooms and stuff. But if you're gonna lay the tile, at least be a little different and just lay it where I think it's called offset, similar to like a brick layout, rather than just having straight lines. We always lay tile in kind of an offset pattern versus just a straight pattern. And it makes the house look a lot nicer, makes it look bigger. And it just looks, over the time periods, it seems that tile that's laid down, that's straight, it just seems to age a little bit faster because the grout lines get dirty, and you can kind of see the great grout lines straight throughout, and they're all dirty. Ceiling fans. Again, one of the big things that, we hear owners say all the time is that, well, they prefer a ceiling fan in each and every single bedroom. Well, that's great. I mean, that's great for your house. But however, again, we really don't recommend ceiling fans in most places other than just kind of the main living room and the master bedroom. We just put that two light bulb fixture throughout the whole house. It works great, looks nice. And it's what we do for every single house. And it's one of the things about ceiling fans is that we never put the ceiling fans, the one with the cover where you have to take off the cover to change light bulbs. In those situations, you actually have to, once you put the cover back on, you actually have to line the string to line up the hose correctly. And then people never line it up correctly and they yank on the string on the ceiling fan, and then it ends up breaking the ceiling fan. So to avoid that, we've always picked out ceiling fans that you can actually replace the light bulb without actually opening the diffuser from it, the cover. The other thing that we've done, which I've never heard anyone else do this, is that we actually standardize the light bulbs throughout the file. So we have one type of light bulb that, you can go buy a whole pack and just change out the light bulbs. Again, we've heard owners in the past talk about, hey, we like fluorescent lighting in the kitchen. I mean, that's great. Again, now you have to go find a specific type of light bulb for the kitchen, and just makes your life a little bit harder versus buying one giant pack of light bulbs that can replace every single light bulb in the whole house. So one of the other things is, so now we're going towards tenants, right? We minimize verbal communication to people. Everything, we always want everything written. One of the most common things I hear, and I was even taught this, was that, you get the application, and then if you want to go forward with someone, then interview them. And I've never understood that. So I don't actually talk to any of the potential tenants that we talk to, potential applicants that could be tenants. We never interview them. To me, your application speaks for itself. Your credit score, your rental history, your credit history, your criminal history, all those speak to it. I've never understood, like, what is someone looking to learn when you're interviewing someone? Is it because you don't like something on their screening, so you're asking them the question? I think the response will always be is that there's a reason for it. There's always a reason for everything, right? But we're not here for charity. We're trying to put the best tenant in the house. You want to select the best tenant, and the best tenant is going to be the ones that have the best screening. So we never actually interview any single tenant. The only time we actually talk to an applicant is we're actually requesting more documents. It's very similar to if you were to apply for a mortgage, for example. If the mortgage company, they're going to request, your pay stubs, and they're going to run your credit history. I don't think a mortgage company is going to be swayed by whatever story or whatever excuse you have for a deficient item on your credit score. If it's there, it's there. You're gonna have to fix your credit. So we never ever talk to potential applicants. And then also at the same time, it keeps it business, because now you're hearing their story. You put an emotion to it. Anytime you put an emotion towards a business, that's when the kind of things go bad. The other thing is all the instructions need to be written. Again, like I said, if we go back to the original slides, like, hey, standardize your practice. So meaning whatever communication that you want a tenant to have, how they get the keys, when they should turn on the water, when they should switch gas, all these should be written and set up and saved in place. So whenever you have a new tenant, you can just kind of forward it on. And like I said, set written expectations. So it kind of goes back to the same thing. It's the same point, is that, hey, if a tenant moves in, your expectation is they set up water within 2 or 3 days, right? Give them a grace period just to kind of get things moving. Everyone's, a little bit busy, or sometimes things get missed. You don't want water shut off on them. And that's kind of the worst thing. The tenant moves in, they don't have water. So you give them a 2 to 3 day grace period. So that's your expectation. But after that, they're penalized if they don't turn on water. So that was kind of it. That's kind of some of my unconventional tips. I I really believe that some of those items were kind of counter to what I've learned throughout the years. Again, so this is what we at Property Care, I guess you could say, learn. It really kind of has helped us throughout trying to manage from, going, when I first started, I think I got a client that had 20 units, grew up to 100 to 400 to around 500. And then we stayed around 400 units throughout, I guess, for the past 4 or 5 years. But, those are some of my best advices in terms of that have always stuck me through the years. I didn't really go back through research and try to vet out all the different things that I learned that I don't follow anymore. Or the other advice that I could give is that, you guys can hire us as a property management company if you own rental properties and kind of have all those things done for you guys. And here's my information. I didn't know if there's any questions and answers. The first question I have is, do you do business outside of Houston? We do greater Houston area. So we go from, I think, Katy to the west, Baytown to the east, Conroe to the north, and all the way to Lamar, Texas City in the south. And then I guess you can say Rocharon in the, I guess, south. Oh, sorry. So we do a flat fee for our property management. It is $89 per month when rent is paid. So only when rent is paid. So if a property is vacant, we do not charge a management fee at all. We try to align our goals with your goals. So we're not going to make money when you're not making money. It's kind of one of our big things. The other thing, I think probably the most common question that we get all the time is that, how well do we screen? The answer is that we always try to put the best tenant in every single property. That doesn't always happen. When we do a screening, is at a point in time. So a person can have a job today and not have a job tomorrow. But I will tell you that, our goal is to build a long-term relationship, like, earning a leasing fee, half a month's rent, or a full month's rent, and then never making another management fee from it. That's really not our goal. Our goal is, like, if you buy one property, the truth is that if you have one rental property, you should buy two. And if you have two, you should buy four. Because you don't want to hurt on cash flow when one property goes vacant. So you should buy two. So when one property goes vacant, and then you'll have cash flow to cover that. And then it goes on and on. So I have a question here. What are some good current areas for Houston rental properties? The answer for that is very relative. So you can rent a house anywhere in Houston at any time. So when I first started my investing career, I would suggest that, here's another suggestion that someone had given me, was that you should stick to a certain area. I never stuck to a certain area. I bought a house anywhere where I thought the deal was amazing or good or really good. Never stuck to a certain area. So I have houses 1960, Clear Lake, Katy, Friendswood. I have houses all over the places.
Right here, they are also asking. Here, Alba is asking, do your applications fees change annually? How did you come up with fees and deposits?
I'm sorry, give me 1 second. I'm trying to get the chat. Here you go.
Yes, they're in the chat.
So do your application fees change annually? How did you come up with fees and deposits? So as far as application fees, our application fee is $45 per application. Everyone over the age of 18 has to apply for a house. As far as fees go, so we came up with an $89 per unit monthly fee, right? And there are people who say, like, wow, $89, that's very cheap. And my response is, like, well, that depends, right? So if you're looking at a $3,000 rental, and my monthly or my management fee is $89, that's a very low percentage. But if your rental is only $700 rental, $89 on top of $700 is more than 10%. So from my perspective, we have a sliding scale on a rental as a percentage based on the tenant risk, right? We could probably agree that a $3,000 rental tenant risk, meaning the tenant's chances of not paying is very slim. They're more likely to able to afford the property versus someone that lives in a $700 unit. So as the tenant risk decreases, our percentage management fee actually decreases, but as the rental prices increase, or as the rental price decreases, our percentage of rental, our management fee increases. So that's the way I see it, is a sliding scale in terms of based on tenant risk and not necessarily property. There are companies that do, based on a percentage, like 10% of 3,000, which is $300, but really they're doing less work on a $3,000 unit than they are doing a $700 unit. We had another question. Do you charge extra for eviction services? So we use an outside service for eviction. That is a straight pass-through cost to you. Again, our goal is to never put in a tenant that has to actually get evicted. So the way commissions work in Houston, or I guess Texas for that matter, for the most part, normally it's 1 full month's rent. We co-broke almost 100% of our leases. So 50% goes to the listing agent. So we have to evict a tenant before they finish the first initial term of their 12-month lease. Then we don't take another commission, another 50%, when we have to relet the property.
Great. Also,
do I help investors buy properties? So I actually have a brokerage side called Parson Properties. We're a full service brokerage firm. So we do help investors buy properties also at the same time. You may not work directly with me, but you do work with my team of agents, and we do help investors quite a bit to buy properties. So what does your property management services encompass? Really everything that you would do. Honestly, you should not know who your tenant is. Your tenant should not know who you are. We're not general contractors, kind of the big mistake. A lot of people think we outsource that service. We try to make sure our goal, again, is if you come and contact us, and our goal is to make a commission and earn money on it. So we try to facilitate the process. If you need help on a remodel, we'll try to help with the process and move things along, because the reason why you're reaching out to us, because you probably have a full-time job and do something else. So we can help facilitate that process, move it a little bit quicker, get the property on the market, get it rented, and then, for you to make money and for us to make money at the same time. I have a question. I have a condo and live with 2 roommates, but the home is under my name. How would go about becoming an official landlord to help with taxes? I'm not really sure I understand how that would help with taxes. I guess if you could probably, I don't know how that could help with taxes, because you actually have to report it. You got to gross up your income and gross up your expenses. That's really what you want to do. If you want to do, I guess, what's called house hacking, then you would have to, but you have to report your income. Your income would in theory be greater than your expenses. So that would actually hurt you on your income taxes. Has the eviction moratorium impacted your business? Absolutely. It has affected me personally, the worst possible way. I had a tenant in there that stayed there for 8 months. Couldn't do anything about it. So yeah, it has impacted me personally amongst some other landlords and investors at the same time. But again, I don't stress about it. You can only control what you can control. If you start stressing about everything that you can't control, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing I could do. I guess I could refinance to a normal, business loan or something, and then try to get them out a little bit quicker. But I have enough rental properties where it covers those expenses. Do I just focus on residential or commercial? We only do residential. You suggest individual houses, duplexes, apartment buildings. It really depends on what your goals are. I've had quite a bit of investors that graduated from single family to multifamily. People always bring up duplexes. I think duplexes is a great soundbite in investing, but there's really not many duplexes, fourplexes in Houston available. Not saying there's none. There's some, but getting a hold of those is kind of difficult to get. Definitely have some owners that own those, but again, it's not as prevalent as single family homes. And and then you can go on HAR and check it out yourself. But there's not many duplexes or fourplexes available for sale at this moment. All right, next one. What is your experience with eviction? Evictions are easy. You just gotta file your paper right. I mean, it's like getting a mortgage or doing any kind of other paperwork. You got to do the paperwork correctly. Now, there's different judges have different things. So, for example, we do a lot in Katy. So there's the courthouse on Clay. Very easy. We know his process. He actually gives you a script in order to do evictions. I've sat in the courthouse and up in Humble, plays by a different set of rules. Every judge is different. I'm not going to speak on, I would say as long as you file your paper correct, give the vacate notice properly, file the eviction properly at the right courthouse, you shouldn't have any problems unless the judge, puts his own emotion into it. You shouldn't have any problems with it. Eviction in the COVID times. Yeah. So everything just opened up. We actually just filed our first few evictions this past week, and we'll see how that goes. So we actually have been doing evictions. So so the other thing was that I said I waited 8 months for my own personal property. And the reason for that is because we waited for his lease to run up. So you could still file evictions for people for expired leases, meaning like, hey, your lease has expired. You need to move out. You just couldn't evict them for non-payment of rent according to the moratorium. So you couldn't get a judgment on it. Not like the tenant was ever going to pay anyway. So we didn't really care. But we were evicting because lease was up. What is the best rate of ROI on rental properties? Infinity. It's funny that used to be a thing. If you ever read in the Bigger Pockets or some of the other investing forums where you get that BRRR or whatever, this happened to me once in my life where, you cash out refinance, you did 100% refinance, ended up paying nothing. So my return on investment was infinity from a cash flow perspective, right? Or on a cash on cash perspective. So infinity does exist where I put no money in and then I get a return. About how many rental properties do I need to have for it to make sense to hire your services? It really depends on you. The reason why people use a property management is because life gets in the way. You got kids, you got work. All of a sudden you can't keep up with managing your rental properties. I will say this is officially unofficial is that, or unofficially official is I think once you get to 8 rental properties, this is talking to a lot of investors. Once you get to about 8 rental properties, you've taken your congratulations. You just got another full-time job.
Great, Jerry. Thank you very much for all the information and for answering all the questions. It was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for assisting tonight to this webinar. It was a pleasure. And as I guess we have no more questions, we will end the webinar. For the ones who asked for the recording, yes, we have the recording, so we will be sharing it with you. Thank you everyone for your time. Thank you very much, Jerry.
All right, thank you everyone for coming out, listening.